Hi guys, Neil Tappin here from Golf Monthly and welcome to West Hill Golf Club, where today we're out testing Mizuno's new drivers for 2019. Now if you are in the market for a new driver this year, I'm sure the likes of Titleist and Ping and Callaway and TaylorMade and Cobra will all come across your radar. They all have excellent driver models out there, but one brand that certainly should not be ignored is Mizuno. Now over the years Mizuno have had some fantastic drivers, but the problem they faced in recent years in particular is that they haven't had much traction out on tour for one reason or another. I've got in my hands here last year's Mizuno ST190 driver. This was their sort of all singing all dancing movable weight driver. And the most noticeable thing about it was the colour. I think Mizuno gave it that really striking, bold crown because they wanted to make sure that if any of their players did use it out on tour, that it was as visible as possible. The issue is that doing something like that with the colouring makes it a little bit of a Marmite club. Some people will love it, some people will hate it. Now the performance of this driver really did stack up. If you are interested, take a look at Neil Tappin's review and you'll see just how well it performed last year. But when I heard that Mizuno were introducing two new drivers in 2019, I was really keen to see what they'd done with the aesthetics, and I can show you now because these are the two new drivers for 2019. This is the ST190 and the ST190G, and as you can see, Mizuno have gone for a much more simple classic look down behind the ball at address, and I think they've absolutely nailed it. Obviously Mizuno are renowned for their really good looking golf clubs, particularly within the iron sector. And I think what they've done here is they've introduced this carbon composite crown, just 12 grams, which obviously has a benefit because it allows the engineers to place weight where they want it to. But I also think it adds that really modern look to a driver that still has a very traditional shape. I think this looks absolutely stunning. Now, a few other things. Obviously, the weighting system on the sole has been simplified for 2019. If you have a look at last year's version, it was a little bit more going on. There was a bit more to get your head around. For 2019, it's a bit more simple. You have these two weights here that are movable. You can put them both on the same side of the driver to give it a draw bias or a fade bias, and you can move them forward or back to allow for different spin characteristics. So back to put the spin up, forward to move the spin down. So some really good adjustability in there. And then obviously you have the standard ST190 driver, which doesn't have that same adjustability. It does have an adjustable hosel. Other than that, this should offer really good forgiveness, and is designed, this version of this club is designed for mid to low swing speeds. Now a couple of other things they've done to the design. Firstly, they've got a forged titanium face that should help ball speed on off-centre hits. That should make it more forgiving. And also, you'll notice Mizuno still have their amplified wave sole, but that first wave is slightly wider than in the previous generation. That should again aid ball speed, particularly on shots that are struck slightly low in the face. The big question is, how does the new driver perform? Well, I tested all three of these drivers yesterday at the Foresight Sports headquarters before coming back here to West Hill to hit them again. So we tested them on a launch monitor using the GC Quad launch monitor. We had the Titleist Pro V1 X golf balls, and all the drivers were set up in a comparable way. So in the two new drivers, I had the Mitsubishi Tensei 70 X Flex shaft in both of those. In last year's version, I was using a Kurakaji X Flex shaft. So last year's driver was set to 9.5. as was the ST190. This year's driver was in a different head, so that was a 9 degree, which I then played around with, and I'll show you the results of that now. I'm going to start with last year's model. What you're looking at here are the average numbers I was able to achieve. So ball speed 164.0, fantastic ball speed, up there with anything that I've hit really. Launching at a really good height for me, 13.2 is a sort of mid-launch. Mid-spin as well, 22.66. I was really pleased that last year's driver wasn't spinning too low. I do have an issue with that sometimes with drivers that spin too low. The ball flight was really good, quite high, 38 peak height, but pretty good. And the overall distance was coming out at 289 yards. So the good news is, if you did invest in this driver, you will have got something that performs really well. The question is, do the new drivers for 2019 improve on that? And the answer is yes. So the ST190, the standard version for 2019, ball speed went up to 165.1. The launch angle was slightly down at 12.6, not much to speak of there. The spin was also slightly down, again, not much to speak of at 2073. I'd say that was absolutely optimal spin for me. And the peak height was 35 yards, so slightly lower than with the last generation driver, but pretty good. And all of that meant that I was getting an overall carry distance of 292. And because the bull flight was slightly lower, slightly stronger, the overall distance gain that I was getting with this year's non-movable weight driver was quite significant over last year's model. Then I tested the movable weight version, the G version, with firstly with both weights set forward, and the issue I had there is that it wasn't spinning high enough. The average spin I was getting was 1849. That wasn't quite enough for me, and so whilst the overall distance was pretty good, the bull flight was quite strong, and I felt like I was going to have the odd shot that was going to fall out of the sky in that setup. So I felt like I needed to move the weights back, which I did. I moved them in more of a sort of a mid-weight profile, which got the spin up a little bit. So ball speed of 164, launching at 12.4, which is pretty solid, spinning at 2021, and peak height of 33, so quite a strong ball flight for me, a pretty strong ball flight for me. And it was flying a total carry distance of 290, so not quite as good as the standard ST190. So what I then did was, because the ST190G that I was testing was in 9 degrees, I then turned up the loft a little bit. For some reason the ball speed went up. I don't know why. I was getting ball speed of 165.7, obviously struck it a little bit better in this session, but the launch angle was 12.1 degrees, spinning at 2103, and the total distance was 292 with a peak height of 34. So really consistent performance between the ST190, the standard non-adjustable version, and the adjustable version, both carrying exactly the same at 292. So then I came here to West Hill, and I put both of the drivers through their paces on the range here to get a feel for how the two drivers sound through impact, to understand what the feel of those two drivers was like. Because it's such a crucial part of the test, and also when you're testing golf clubs inside on a simulator, it's very difficult to really get a sense for the feel of the golf club. So I hit them both out here, and I would say that I definitely preferred the feel of the non-adjustable driver. So the ST190G just felt, to me, had a bit more of a ping sound to it, a little bit more of a higher pitch sound through impact. That will be exactly what a lot of people out there are looking for, but for me it wasn't quite right. It was just a little bit higher pitched than the ST190, which I thought felt absolutely superb. So the question is, which of these two drivers would I go for? So the ST190 comes in with a recommended retail price of $399, and the ST190G comes in with a recommended retail price of $449. So there's only £50 in it, and for the extra money you do get that added flexibility that comes with being able to move weights around. If you are changing your swing and you start hitting a big draw, being able to set the weights up to counteract that can be really handy. And it also does enable you to really dial the driver in terms of your spin rates. For me, with the way that I swing it, I was getting fantastic performance out of the off-the-rack standard ST190. And as I say, I tend to be a little bit of a low spin player. So if I was going to go for one or other of these two drivers, I think it would be the ST190, the slightly less expensive version of these two drivers. They both look the same down behind the ball at address, so it's nothing to choose from in that department. And for me, this was just pick it up, off you go, performed really well, shot after shot, and it felt that little bit better in my hands out here on the golf course. Guys, thank you very much for watching. Please do leave comments below. What do you think of the two new drivers from Mizuno? What do you think about what Mizuno have done in terms of the way that they've changed these drivers for 2019? We'd be really interested to hear your thoughts. Please do hit the like button if you've liked the video. But for now, from West Hill, it's goodbye.